The clink of a spoon gently tapping the rim of a porcelain mug rang out in a lonely rhythm against the backdrop of flickering fluorescent light. The scent of burnt coffee mingled with the stale aroma of used frying oil lingering in the air of Hale's Diner, a small eatery wedged between a gas station and a laundromat on the east side of Columbus. The plastic chairs were chipped at the edges, and the wood-paneled walls had long since faded with time. Yet the diner still welcomed its regulars, long-haul truckers, fathers picking up their kids late from school, or broke college students at the end of the month. Amid it all, Lily Sanders was carefully wiping each ketchup bottle, straightening sugar packets, her eyes following every little detail as though each clean centimeter was a reflection of her own dignity. Her faded cream apron bore a small ink stain along the lower hem, a mark she had accidentally made years ago with an old cookbook her mother had left behind. She never washed it out, never tried. She kept it just the way it was. Lily was 27. She had been working here for 3 years. She came from the Huron district, a place everyone knew was meant only to be born in and to leave as soon as possible. Her father had died early in a construction accident. Her mother, once a cafeteria cook at a company, suffered a stroke on her 50th birthday, leaving Lily and her younger brother Noah with a pile of hospital bills and a house drowning in debt collection notices. Lily had once studied culinary arts at a community college, earning a basic certificate, but that certificate was folded and stored away the day Noah got into a computer engineering program. From that moment on, she traded dreams for utility bills. No one at Hale's Diner knew any of this. She had never told a soul. Hale's Diner wasn't a place anyone dreamed of staying. It opened 6 days a week, closed on Sundays. Minimum wage, no bonuses, no fresh uniforms, no free staff meals. Everything here was good enough. Just as manager Craig Bolton liked to say, as long as customers don't complain, we're fine. Servers like Lily had no right to demand anything more. She just worked, saved what she could to send home for her recovering mother, and sent a little more to Noah, disguised as a community scholarship. Noah didn't know, and she wanted it that way. She didn't have close friends at the diner. Carla Jennings, the veteran server, had once been the acting manager before being demoted for no clear reason. Since then, Carla had grown distant from the staff but overly chatty with her type of customers. Those in work uniforms or paint-splattered clothes were often met with half-hearted service, while white-collar men in dress shirts were greeted with flirtatious smiles and extra questions. Lily noticed but stayed quiet. Speaking up meant being marked. Then there was Derek Shields, the new hire. Young, good-looking, quick on his feet, but not in a way Lily admired. Derek had mastered the art of pretending to be busy, faking enthusiasm when management was around, and disappearing during peak hours by taking out the trash for 20 minutes. But he knew how to flatter Carla, and Craig too. That kind of effortless survival without effort left Lily both tired and quietly sad. That Wednesday night, Lily's shift stretched until 11 p.m. Drizzle tapped against the glass windows and the diner was nearly empty. She didn't mind. It was the kind of night she preferred. Not too hectic, not too crowded. A chance to clean up early. As she slid the last plate into the rack, she thought about sending Noah some extra money tomorrow for books. Suddenly, the door chime rang. An older black man stepped in. Gray dress shirt, slightly wrinkled khaki pants, a baseball cap in hand. He paused at the threshold, eyes scanning the room. Yes, ma'am. Not with hesitation, but as though checking to see if he'd be welcome. Lily recognized that look. She'd seen it in her mother's eyes when the family had once dared to walk into a buffet a bit too fancy for them on her father's birthday, and were promptly seated next to the restroom. Carla was leaning against the counter, eyes glued to her phone. Derek glanced up for barely 2 seconds before turning back to joke with the cashier. Lily stood, wiped her hands on a towel, and walked toward the guest. "Good evening, sir," she said softly as if greeting someone important. "Just you tonight? Would a window seat be all right?" The man smiled, eyes lighting up briefly in relief. "That'd be great, thank you." Lily led him to the window-side booth, placed a menu on the table, and gently pulled out the chair with practiced professionalism. "Can I get you something to drink to start?" "Black coffee," he replied. "Right away, sir." As Lily turned away, she felt Carla's gaze on her. She didn't care. One hand poured coffee with fluid ease. The other was already holding a canister of condensed milk. Older guests often preferred it, but the man shook his head as she placed it on the table. Just the black stuff, he winked. The way old folks like me stay sharp in this noisy world. Lily smiled, responding with a quiet remark of her own. Glad you still chose a little diner in that world. Back at the counter, she heard Carla whispering to Derek. There she goes again, Miss Morality, Carla said loud enough for Lily to catch. Bet she's hoping for a $20 tip just for that saintly smile. Lily bit her lip but walked straight into the kitchen. She didn't work for tips. She worked because she knew a decent meal might be the last good thing someone remembers after a brutal day. What she didn't know was that the man, with those calm eyes and calloused hands, was the one who would determine the fate of the diner. She didn't know that her small gestures were being noted, not by cameras, but by a man who had once suffered loss by trusting people with name tags that said manager. She acted on instinct, the instinct of someone who had known hunger, fear, and scorn, and who understood better than anyone that kindness, however small, could be the thing that changed an entire system. And tonight she had just planted that very seed. The night moved slowly, like coffee dripping into a white porcelain mug, each drop steady as the breath of a place long acquainted with solitude. Lily sat on a stool by the cashier counter, her order pad still open, pen tucked behind her ear. Outside, the rain was as thin as silk, streaking long trails across the glass windows. She glanced toward the older guest's table. He was sipping his coffee, eyes gazing out into the night, his expression as though weighing an entire lifetime. No phone, no laptop, no rush, just quiet breathing in a still posture. Someone like that isn't simple, Lily thought. But that wasn't her concern. Her job was to make sure he felt welcomed and that his stomach was filled with something warm. What would you like to eat, sir? She asked as she returned to his table. We've got fresh grilled salmon tonight. It's the special. Sounds good, he said. Do you believe it's worth trying? I never brag, she replied, but anyone who's ordered it has come back at least once. The man chuckled. Then I'll trust you. Lily jotted down the order and headed to the kitchen. Her hands moved quickly as she rang the bell and handed the slip to the head cook, a heavy-set, quiet man who usually communicated only in grunts. No one in the kitchen bothered to look up. Everything ran on autopilot. She grabbed extra napkins, brewed a new pot of coffee, and stepped back out. Just as she passed the counter, Carla let out a light whistle, eyes still on her phone. Salmon, huh? That's a waste. Lily paused for a second. Not because of the words, but the attitude. That way of looking down on someone just because they were kind to someone who couldn't afford to be treated kindly. I serve customers, Lily replied calmly. I don't pick which ones to serve. Carla smirked. Nice ideals, but ideals don't pay the rent. That line struck a nerve. Lily thought of her mother, of the leaky little house, of this month's electric bill she was still trying to cover. But she didn't react. She smiled faintly, nodded, and kept walking. Sometimes silence is how you defend your values without shouting them. As Lily checked the coffee machine, Derek walked by carrying a tray of empty glasses. Carla says ordering something fancy like that means you're trying to impress the boss, he said offhandedly, smirking. Wonder if that old guy even knows how to tip. Derek, Lily looked up, have you ever served someone without expecting anything back? I have, but people like him? Not worth it. No one's not worth it, Derek. The only question is whether we want to be worthy of kindness. Derek didn't reply then. He turned away. Lily exhaled slowly. The diner air grew thick, like steam fogging the windows. Craig Bolton, the manager, still hadn't come out of his office. That door only opened for sign-offs, inventory, or terminations. A room with dim yellow lighting, whose door click sent chills through the staff. The salmon arrived 10 minutes later, gently steaming, fragrant with black pepper. Lily adjusted the tray, topped off the coffee, and brought it out. The guest looked up, his eyes lighting up oddly when the plate landed in front of him. There it is, he said. Better than a 5-star restaurant. Don't praise it too soon, Lily smiled, stepping aside. He cut a piece, brought it to his mouth, and chewed slowly. After a moment, he nodded. You studied cooking, didn't you? Lily froze. She hadn't expected to be caught. How'd you know? Because that's the seasoning of someone trained. You balance the salt and lemon just right. I studied for a while, but couldn't continue. That's a shame. Not really. I still get to work in the kitchen, just not at the stove. He smiled. And you still make meals people remember. Lily felt a warmth bloom in her chest, a rare feeling in a place like Hale's Diner, where kindness was often mocked as weakness. But this man was different, not because he praised the food, but because he listened and understood. From a distance, Carla watched, eyes tight with annoyance. Derek stepped up, whispered something to her, and both of them glanced Lily's way before laughing. Lily ignored them. But she knew. Ooh, a quiet tide was rising, waiting for the moment to pull her under. As Lily returned to the counter, Craig Bolton opened his office door and stepped out. His polished black shoes tapped heavily on the tiled floor. He said nothing, just scanned the room. His gaze landed on Lily before he turned back inside and closed the door. The gesture was unremarkable, but Lily felt a chill running down her spine. Her instincts, honed through 3 years of uncomplaining, nonstop work, were whispering a warning. She resumed cleaning. Customers began to leave. Hale's Diner settled into its usual late-night hush. But this time, the silence didn't soothe Lily. Something in the air had changed, as if someone had just made a decision about a life, without a word. And she didn't know it was her own life they'd decided on. The sun had yet to rise beyond the far rooftop edges, leaving only faint streaks of pale gold tucked behind the gray clouds. The early morning air in East Columbus was thick with damp and piercing cold, making Lily's thin coat useless against the chill. She gripped the steering wheel tighter, pulling into the Hale's Diner parking lot at exactly 6:45 a.m., just like every other day. Inside, the diner was still dark. The windows, fogged with condensation, reflected the dull red glow of the "Open Soon" sign, still unlit. Lily turned off the engine, grabbed the neatly folded apron from the passenger seat, slung her canvas bag over her shoulder, and took a deep breath. She was never late. Not once in 3 years. She stepped in, the familiar chime of the doorbell ringing soft and clear like every morning. But this time, no one responded. No Carla complaining about the lack of coffee. No Derek flashing photos of his new girlfriend. Just an empty register, the sharp scent of disinfectant still fresh, and an unfamiliar chilling silence. Lily looked around. She saw Craig Bolton, the manager, standing at the end of the hallway in front of his office door, holding a stack of files. When their eyes met, he gave a slight nod, his voice empty and official. Lily, come in for a minute. She froze for a moment. No good morning, no small talk. Her steps grew heavier as she walked past the counter, a sense of no return settling in. From the corner of her eye, she caught Carla at the coffee station, arms crossed, wearing a strange look, part smug, part expectant. Craig's office always smelled of damp paper and lingering tobacco. On his desk sat a thick, worn folder in a pale brown envelope. He didn't ask her to sit. We've decided to terminate your contract, Lily. One short, blunt sentence. No lead-in, no emotion, no trace of guilt or discomfort. Lily stood frozen, a ringing in her ears. I'm sorry, she whispered. I don't understand. This comes from upper management, Ed. It's not up for debate. Craig spoke as if relaying someone else's words, but the evasive look in his eyes revealed the decision was entirely his. You're firing me. For what reason? Lily's voice began to tremble, not out of fear, but from the sheer shock. Not a cultural fit for the service environment. Craig pulled a sheet of paper from the folder, but didn't hand it over. Certain behaviors that cross boundaries, lack of internal coordination, negatively affecting staff morale. You mean because I served that guest last night? Her voice cracked. Craig didn't answer. He merely shrugged, that same shrug he used whenever a customer complained and he didn't want to deal with it. It said, it's done, you can't change it. Lily felt her knees weakened. In her head, Carla's mocking laughter rang out, Derek's sidelong glances, and now Craig's hollow stare. She placed a hand on the chair in front of her to steady herself, breathing in deeply. 3 years, never late once. Not one customer complained. I cleaned the restroom without being asked. I kept silent when I was ignored, belittled, disrespected. Craig didn't respond. His fingers drummed lightly on the edge of the desk. And now you say I'm not a fit? She repeated, her tone no longer angry, but quietly devastated. You'll receive your final paycheck at the end of the week. The termination form is already printed. Lily straightened, removed her apron, and laid it on the desk. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes never left Craig's. What you just did isn't right, and you know it. Craig remained silent, cold, brutally detached. Lily turned and walked out of the office. Carla looked at her with an unhidden smile. Derek pretended to wipe a table but kept stealing glances. No one said anything. No one asked. Not a single goodbye. She walked out the front door. The sky was now fully bright, but inside her was a darkness untouched by any light. Lily got into her car and slammed the door harder than usual. Her hands gripped the steering wheel. The pain wasn't from losing a job, it was from losing the one thing that made her believe kindness and still had a place. Losing the faith that doing the right thing would ever be acknowledged. 3 years of quiet endurance, only to be tossed out like an operational error. She didn't cry. She just breathed in shallow gasps, like her chest was being squeezed. Her phone vibrated in her bag, an unknown number. Lily stared at the screen for a moment, unsure whether to answer. Then she tapped the button, her voice hoarse. Hello? A deep voice spoke. Lily Sanders? Yes, who's this? It's me, Vincent Hale. I'm the man you served last night. She froze. Oh, yes, I'm very sorry if I'm not calling to complain. I just heard what happened this morning, and I think we need to meet immediately. Lily was silent. In her mind, one sentence echoed. This isn't over. And maybe it's only just begun. Lily remained seated in the car for a while after the call ended. Her hand still held the phone, its screen now black. But her mind was reeling from the words she had just heard. Outside, the wind rustled gently through the trees in front of Hale's diner, scattering a few dry leaves onto the windshield. Everything seemed to pause. And in that moment, Lily no longer felt like the girl who had just been fired. She was standing on the edge, between old and new, between failure and something unnamed. The call lasted less than 5 minutes, but within it, an entire universe flipped upside down. I'm not just a customer, Vincent Hale had said, his voice calm and even, as if he'd made hundreds of important decisions in his lifetime. I'm the owner of Hale's Diner, not just the East Columbus branch, but the entire chain. Lily had heard the name before. Vincent Hale, a discreet businessman, rarely seen in the media, but known in the business world as someone with a different view of people. Rumor had it he was once a plumbing technician before building his restaurant empire. Some said he would sometimes pose as a customer to inspect his branches, but no one knew if it was true. Now Lily knew. It was entirely true. And she, the one just pushed out the restaurant door, was exactly the reason he had shown up the night before. I watched you all evening, Vincent continued. Every way you approached me, placed the menu, spoke to me, even if you poured coffee, carefully, precisely, but without pretense. That's the way only people who still believe in kindness act. Lily said nothing. She didn't know what to say. You were fired, Vincent said, because I wanted to see what would happen. I didn't intervene, because if I did, I wouldn't have seen how rotten my system has become. Those words chilled Lily to the bone. The system he spoke of was the very place she had once considered her job, her shelter, however worn out. Craig Bolton didn't report truthfully. Carla Jennings and Derek Shields, two employees who chose silence in the face of discrimination and disdain. I'd had suspicions from internal reports, but I needed to see for myself. And I was the test? Lily asked, her voice soft, but with a hint of something caught in her throat. You were the proof, he corrected. That within a cold system, someone still does the right thing, even knowing they won't be recognized. That's the person I need. Vincent paused for a few seconds, then spoke slowly like delivering a final verdict. I want you to come back, but not as a server. I want you to manage the branch. She froze. That statement wasn't exactly a reward, it was a tidal wave arriving after everything had been swept away. Excuse me? Lily repeated. We'll be letting Craig go first thing this morning. I don't need anyone else to step in. I need someone who understands the culture of service from the heart. You know which customers have been ignored. You know what needs to be retaught first. Lily swallowed hard. She looked out of the windshield. Some morning shift staff were beginning to arrive. She could still see Carla, coffee in hand, chatting with a regular. No one there knew that in just a few hours, they would be looking at Lily in a completely different light. You believe I can do that? I believe because you don't believe you're good enough. People who are afraid are people who understand responsibility. People who've been belittled are the ones who know how to listen. I came up from the bottom myself. I recognize people like me. Lily said nothing. Something stirred within her. Not pride, but awakening. She remembered her mother's words. You don't need to shout to prove your worth, but you must stand up when someone tries to push you down. You can start tomorrow morning, Vincent said. 8 a.m. Don't enter through the employee door, walk through the front, because starting tomorrow, that's where a leader walks in. Lily nodded, even though she knew he couldn't see it. I, I'll be there. On time, but no rush. Take today off, take a hot shower, drink some tea, get your mind ready. I'll be there tomorrow. The call ended. Lily placed the phone on the seat beside her, both hands covering her face. Her tears didn't fall out of sorrow. They were the culmination of 3 years' worth of patience, silence, and belief, finally seen by someone. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. Maybe resistance, judgment, more challenges. But one thing was certain. She was no longer the girl behind the counter. She was the one walking into Hale's diner, not to serve, but to lead. The sun hadn't yet broken through when Lily stood before Hale's diner that morning. The storefront looked the same. Aged brick walls, a flickering neon sign, the lingering scent of frying oil from the fast food joint next door, mixing with the distinctive aroma of morning coffee. But inside her, everything had changed. No longer was there anxiety, caution, or a desperate will to survive. What she felt now was the calm of someone who knew exactly why they were walking in. Lily wore a crisp white shirt and a gray coat that reached her knees. No apron. She wasn't in a rush. She stood outside the door for a moment, as if quietly closing the chapter of the last 3 years before opening a new one. The door opened with the familiar jingle. But this time, the chime wasn't signaling the start of a shift. It was a declaration. I'm back. And this time I decided. Inside, Hale's diner was beginning to stir for the breakfast hour. Carla Jennings stood at the coffee counter, eyes on her phone, twirling a plastic cup as usual. Derek Shields was joking with a regular, breaking a donut in half with one hand and lazily wiping the table with an unfaded rag. Craig Bolton had just stepped out of his office, arms full of papers, wearing the same weary, indifferent expression. All three of them turned at once when the doorbell rang. And then they froze. Carla frowned. Derek's mouth dropped open. Craig took a step forward, brows furrowed. Lily stood there, calm, poised, her eyes no longer those of someone recently fired. They were the eyes of someone who knew her place and would never let anyone take it from her again. Carla was the first to react. What are you doing here? She snapped, her voice high-pitched and sharp, as if offended. Lily didn't respond immediately. She walked to the register, placed her bag on the counter, her gaze sweeping slowly across the staff. Silence settled so heavily, they could hear the espresso machine wheezing in the kitchen. I think you'll all find out soon enough, Lily said quietly. Just wait for the right person to confirm it. Derek furrowed his brow, about to speak, when the office door opened again. But this time it wasn't Craig who stepped out, it was Vincent Hale. He wore his familiar trench coat, moved with deliberate ease, and his eyes scanned the room quickly. Carla stiffened. Craig froze. Derek instinctively took half a step back. Vincent walked straight to Lily's side and stopped beside her. "Good morning," Eddie said clearly. "I'm Vincent Hale, owner of Hale's Diner, and today I have an important announcement for all staff here." No one responded. The entire diner held its breath. 3300. "As of now, I am officially announcing a change in management for the East Columbus branch," Vincent said, his eyes settling on Craig. "Craig Bolton, you are terminated, effective immediately. Reason: violation of company culture enabling discriminatory behavior and fostering a toxic work environment." Craig's mouth hung open, lips fumbling. No, I didn't. I just..." Vincent cut him off. "I have full documentation, witness accounts, and internal surveillance. But the biggest reason? You lack the courage to lead with fairness." Craig fell silent. He turned and walked toward the office. No one saw him off. No one stopped him. Vincent turned back, his eyes warm but resolute. "And the person I've chosen to replace him was not selected from reports, but from how she poured coffee, cleaned tables, and served guests from the heart." He looked at Lily. "Lily Sanders, from this morning forward, you are the official branch manager." A frozen moment followed. Carla glared. Derek blurted out, "What?" Lily said nothing. She simply nodded, like someone who didn't need to justify her position. It had come not as a prize, but as a consequence of everything she'd done. Rightfully, quietly. "This is ridiculous," Carla snapped. "Her? She got fired yesterday, and now she's the boss?" Vincent looked directly at Carla. "Ms. Jennings, I'm fully aware of your discriminatory service, your instigation, and how you treat your coworkers. If you can't align with the new culture, the door is still open." Carla went quiet. For the first time in years, no one backed her up. No mocking chuckles from Derek. No familiar nod from Craig. She lowered her eyes and quietly stepped back to the counter. Derek took a sharp breath, trying to appear cooperative. I didn't know it was such a big deal. I was just following." "You knew," Lily said gently but firmly. "You chose to look away. And sometimes silence is complicity." Derek swallowed hard, saying nothing more. Vincent stepped aside, leaving Lily in the center. "From now on, all changes and guidance will come from Lily. I'll return for regular visits, but I won't interfere with day-to-day operations. This place belongs to her." Lily took a deep breath. She turned to the remaining staff, startled faces at the register. In the kitchen, two new servers peeking out from behind the kitchen door. She smiled. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to do what's right. If you work with integrity and fairness, I'll stand by you. If you continue to disregard our guests, reconsider now. Today is a fresh start, and I want us all to begin together." A pause, then the old cook nodded slightly. The cashier let out a quiet breath of relief. A young staff member, someone no one had ever asked the name of, leaned out from the back. "Hi, Miss Lily." Lily turned to look at Vincent. Their eyes met. He smiled faintly. Nothing more needed to be said. The role had been passed, and the person receiving it was ready. The diner was still the same old Hale's diner, with its greasy scent and faded lights. But today it had a new soul, a soul of fairness, kindness, and in someone who once was forgotten. That morning, Hale's diner wasn't any noisier than usual, but the way people moved inside had shifted. There was a strange rhythm in the air, tentative yet precise. Staff began watching one another as if waiting for someone to slip up, setting the tone for the rest. No one said it aloud, but everyone knew Lily's presence as manager had broken the habit of silence, and all were watching to see what she would do next. Lily didn't act hastily. She didn't change shifts, didn't outline new protocols, didn't open the HR file to threaten anyone. She stood behind the counter, observing each cup of coffee being brewed, how the staff greeted customers, the slightest reaction when a guest in a work uniform walked through the door. In that quiet observation, she understood. Culture doesn't change through commands. It begins with the smallest things, like the first look you give someone who walks in. Carla Jennings was still working, but she was no longer the Carla who used to sit with her legs crossed behind the register for 30 minutes without touching a table. She now worked on time, followed protocol, said the right things, but something was missing. Pride. The posture that used to make others tread carefully was now drained of its inherent confidence. Carla knew she no longer had protection. Derek Shields had become noticeably quieter. No more smug laughs, no more offhand jokes with regulars. He simply worked, like a temp waiting for his shift to end so he could decide whether to quit. But Lily didn't fire anyone. Not immediately, not publicly. Instead, she worked as if she were new, bussing tables with the servers, washing glasses when the kitchen was shorthanded, checking the reservation log herself, calling suppliers to ask why deliveries were late. She wasn't just a manager, she was someone proving she didn't need to prove anything. Each action was subtle but struck deep in the group's consciousness. Here, no one stood apart if they wanted the diner to thrive. On the second day, Lily placed a suggestion box beside the espresso machine. Taped on it was a handwritten note. Feedback. No names needed. I will read, and I will listen. By the end of the day, there were 4 slips. The first read, "Thank you for not yelling at the cook when the food was slightly oversalted." The second, "I hope you stay long enough to change what I once thought couldn't be changed." The third, "Carla is trying to convince Derek to quit. You should be careful." And the last, just one short line, "I believe in you." Lily didn't react. She didn't seek the writers out. She simply tucked the slips into her notebook, like small seeds that needed silence to grow. On the third day, a regular, Mr. Bill, who always sat in the corner and rarely spoke, placed a hand on Lily's shoulder as he left. "Something's different about today's meal," he said. "What's different?" Lily smiled. "I don't know. Maybe the way the staff looked me in the eye when they greeted me, not just the words. Or maybe it's because I felt seen." Lily bowed her head. Inside her, something trembled gently. Not from pride, but because she knew. Real change doesn't need to be declared. It spreads quietly, like the scent of fresh bread. But not everyone was ready for that change. That evening, Carla didn't show up for her shift. She texted HR saying she'd lost the motivation to work under someone inexperienced. No farewell, no handover. Lily read the system message, quietly marked her status. Left position, no return date. Derek arrived 20 minutes late, eyes sunken from sleeplessness. I'm sorry," he mumbled. "I've been thinking." "That's okay," Lily replied. "Thinking is good, but it's action that decides everything." Derek fell silent, unable to hide the emotion, torn between a regret and uncertainty. By week's end, Lily called a staff meeting after the dinner shift. She stood before them without a projector, without slides. "No one here needs to be a superhero," she said. "I just want each of us to remember. Customers don't divide by rich or poor, so why should we? From today, every person who walks through that door, whether a truck driver, broke student, or street cleaner, deserves the same smile, the same eye contact, and the same greeting." Silence, no objections. She continued, "I won't force anyone to change out of fear of being fired, but I won't keep anyone who refuses kindness." A second later, Frank, the old cook, usually the quietest one, clapped. Then the cashier. Then one of the new servers. The applause wasn't loud, but steady, and for the first time, Lily saw eyes looking at her without doubt. At the end, Derek walked up and stood before her for a few seconds. "I want to relearn," he said. "I don't know if it's too late." Lily placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's never too late if you're ready to learn through respect." Vincent Hale returned at the end of the week. He entered the diner at 11 a.m., the busiest hour. The place was full, but not chaotic. Staff didn't look down. They didn't avoid guests' eyes. Lily was carrying a tray to a window table. Vincent sat in his usual seat, the same spot where he was first served. The cashier recognized him and smiled. "Let me get Miss Lily." Lily walked over, not surprised. She simply tilted her head. "Hello again, boss," she said gently. "Not sure the salmon's as good as last time, but I'll still give it my best." Vincent laughed. "I didn't come for the salmon. I came to see that you've done what this entire system failed to do for years." Lily poured his coffee, her hand steady. Sunlight angled through the glass, casting a soft glow across her face, a new symbol for Hale's Diner. The place didn't need a new sign, a new wall color, or a new menu to become something different. It just needed people to see one another differently. And Lily, the one once pushed out in silence, was now the one holding the door open for the values long buried. Every Monday morning, Hale's Diner still opened at 7 a.m., sharp, just like it had for years. The neon sign still flickered uncertainly. The wall clock still ticked a few minutes off, and the coffee station still gave off a slightly burnt scent if someone forgot to clean it the night before. But now something was different. Customers no longer felt like they needed to ask permission to be served. They walked straight to their usual tables, smiled at familiar servers, and ordered in friendly shorthand, "The usual, please. Add a bit of lemon chili sauce." A man named Dave once ignored his paint-stained work clothes Now he always sat at the window seat. He brought homemade bread to share with the kitchen, earning a sincere smile and a warm thank you in return. The young cashier, once known only for lowering her gaze when customers got angry, now looked them in the eye and said with confidence, "We're very sorry, let me fix that right away." Derek Shields was now shift supervisor. No longer the guy who cracked sarcastic jokes and dodged work, but avoided his own reflection. He had learned how to step back to when a customer was upset, how to admit a mistake when he forgot a napkin, how to remake a dish without being asked, simply because he knew he could do better. One time, during a rainstorm, he saw a homeless man standing outside. Derek opened the door and said, "Come in, warm up. Coffee's on me. Let me know if you're hungry." No orders, no audience. Frank, the quiet older cook, had started telling stories. He'd worked for big restaurant chains, but never felt his opinion mattered. Now it was different. Whenever Lily wanted to add a new item to the menu, he was her first call. They experimented with flavors, plating. Frank even suggested a new dish. Potato soup from my mom's recipe might not suit city folks' taste, but maybe for people coming off a late shift. And he was right. It now sold out every night after 9 p.m. As for Lily, she didn't need an office to show she was in charge. She still wiped tables, still helped carry food trays, still hand-wrote birthday notes for regulars. Vincent Hale still dropped by now and then. He always sat in the same seat by the window, the one from his first visit. Sometimes he simply observed and jotted a few lines in his notebook. This branch now has a heartbeat of its own. Doesn't need me anymore. And that's when I feel most at peace. One drizzly March afternoon, Lily stayed late after closing. Alone, she checked her receipts, then pulled out a worn notebook from the drawer. It held the anonymous suggestion slips from her first week. Now it was 3 times thicker. She reread some lines. "I used to think diners never change." For the first time, someone asked me, the dishwasher, if I was tired. "Thanks for not giving up on us, even when you had every right to." She smiled and added a final line in purple ink at the bottom of the last page. "A person who does the right thing when no one is watching does it not for reward, but because they know it's worth doing." Lilis closed the notebook and stepped outside the diner. The rain hadn't stopped. She spread her arms and breathed in deep. The streets were still noisy, cars still rushed by, the world hadn't changed much. But she knew there was one small corner of the city where kindness once denied had found a new life. 3 months later, Lily accepted an invitation to speak at a student panel on service management. She stepped onto a small stage, no slides, no scripted speech. You ask what changes the culture of a place. I don't have a formula. I just started with how we look at people, how we greet them, and how we treat those with nothing to give back. A student asked, "How do you not lose faith when people that treat you like you don't matter?" Lily paused before answering. "Don't wait for someone to validate you. Be kind as if the whole world is watching. And if you're lucky, someone truly will." The talk ended with applause, but Lily didn't stay long. She headed back to the diner, where Frank needed help with a big order. She tied on her apron, wiped her hands on the old kitchen towel. But this time, she wasn't just Lily, the worker trying to hold her job. She was Lily, the gatekeeper of a new culture. At the end of the day, a little girl walked in with her mother, clutching a colorful notebook. She stared at Lily and asked shyly, "Are you the boss?" Lily laughed. "No, I'm just the one who tries to keep everything kind." The girl nodded, then drew a heart in her notebook and scribbled underneath, "Nice Lady Lily." Lily kept the drawing, taping it to the back wall near the diner's new motto, "Kindness isn't a skill, it's a choice, Mamaz." The world doesn't change in a day, but in one small diner where every person who walks in is greeted with an unfiltered smile, people begin to believe change is real. And it all started with one person who dared to be kind, even when judged for it.